This is big as Chris Drury continues to try and make the New York Rangers better in the offseason. Multiple reports have come out stating that a superstar in the league is unhappy with where he's at and he would fill a big void in the Rangers lineup. We're going to break all that down, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you now are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. Now let's dive right into it. The player, of course, that I am talking about is Patrik Laine. He no longer wants to play for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's made that known, right? He has come out and said he does not want to play there. And Patrik Laine, who is he? We're going to dive into it. Obviously, a lot of people know who he is as a player, but what he could do for the Rangers, I think, is very interesting. So it all started here the other day. And of course, this is from Reddit, but this broke on Twitter and a bunch of different places. Don Waddell on TSN Overdrive was talking about Laine, and he said he's been very vocal about it way before I got here, and he does not want to play for the Blue Jackets. I think there was a lot of things that went on in the locker room, and he just doesn't want it. And you know, there was a lot of this in Winnipeg for Patrik Laine as well. You know, there was a lot of reports that, you know, the locker room dynamic wasn't great with him. And I'm not saying that he's the problem. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But it does seem like that is happening maybe once again in Columbus. And they've had a lot of turnover the last couple of years. So I think that's something to keep an eye on too. And Don Waddell went on to say, so this is different because it's harder to bring him back knowing the situation, but saying that it might be the option. I'm talking to teams every day. I got 2 or 3 teams engaged right now, and we'll see where it goes. I think that was very interesting. He's got 2 or 3 teams engaged. Could the Rangers be one of them? We'll get into it at the end of the day. Like I told Andy Scott, his representation, I can try and do it, but if there's not a deal to be made, he's going to have to come back here to camp, and we'll welcome him back and try to make the best out of a situation. Now, he did say that, you know, they would welcome him back to camp, and, you know, that's all fine and dandy. You know, if there was no trade partner and if he had to come back and, you know, try and make things work, that's great. But it did sound like they're actively trying to shop him, right? They're actively trying to trade this player, and the Rangers could be in on that. So there's been a couple articles that have come out over the last couple days that, you know, have some trade scenarios. And the first one, it's going to fire up Rangers fans. It's going to have everybody. And I see in the comments, I've talked about Laine before. I've seen the comments, you know, he might be a good fit. He might not be a good fit. Let me know in the comments what you think, because a lot of Rangers fans are pretty fired up on this topic specifically, but we'll get into it. This article, of course, from Cole, could see the Rangers acquire Patrik Laine, and it went further, and this trade is going to fire people up. I will just start at the top. Patrik Laine has requested a trade from the Columbus Blue Jackets, and one trade pitch has him being sent to the New York Rangers. Now, before I get into this too, I just want to say that Patrik Laine on the New York Rangers would fix a problem, a hole, whatever you want to call it. That top line right wing spot would be fixed with a player like this. This is a player who can score at will, and the Rangers, I don't know if they necessarily have that at this time. This is a player with his shot that could score at will, and that can help in the playoffs, I think, right? And we haven't seen too much of Patrik Laine in the playoffs, but when we have, he's been good. So the trade is, and this is, of course, using Puckpedia's Puck GM tool, so it all works out, I guess. Patrik Laine at $4.4 million retained, so half his contract. And the Blue Jackets get Capo Caco, which I don't think Rangers fans would be opposed to. I think that would be a good trade, but it would have to look different than a first-round pick. I do not think Patrik Laine has too much leverage in this scenario, or the Blue Jackets, for that matter, have too much leverage in this scenario, so a first-round pick is a little much. But it might have to be a first-round pick if you're getting that retained salary. This is the only way it would work for the Rangers, because you cannot take on that $8 million cap hit, right? So the only way this would work for the New York Rangers is to retain salary, and maybe you give up a first-round pick. But hey, if you have to give up a first-round pick for Patrik Laine for another 2 years at retained salary, and maybe you move off Jacob Trouba, I don't think that's a bad move. That could be a good move for the New York Rangers. You're adding scoring at will, like I said, could be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. And Laine has permission to speak to other teams as well. This is from the same article. With Laine requesting a trade from Columbus, Blue Jackets general manager Don Waddell spoke to Mark of the Hockey Writers and said the forward has permission to speak to other teams. So sounds like they're actively shopping them. They're looking at different teams. I think he'd be a great fit on the New York Rangers personally. A lot of people think he's, you know, quote unquote soft and all that. When he played in the playoffs, I think it was 2018 for the Winnipeg Jets, he was great. Okay, and that team went pretty far to the conference finals. So ultimately falling to the Vegas Golden Knights in their first year, which was crazy. But yeah, I think the Rangers would be a good fit for him. I wonder if he wants to come to New York because it is a bigger market. Maybe he wants to shy away from that. I'm not sure what's going through his head, but I think it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. And there's been multiple articles, like I said, this one by Tom and the Hockey Writers. There's been multiple articles. So Laine would be a long shot for the Rangers, but they should try. Again, it is a long shot because you're going to have to retain salary. I think that's the only reason why this would be considered a long shot, because he's a perfect fit for the New York Rangers in the lineup on paper. So let's say up front, the obstacles the New York Rangers would face in acquiring Blue Jackets winger Patrik Laine are considerable, but not insurmountable. So obviously it can make it work. Went on to say, obviously, you know, what Laine is about and all that. So I think it's more just about the contract, like stated here, right? Again, on paper, at least, the possibilities are tantalizing. The biggest hurdle is, of course, the contract. Laine has 2 years remaining. Again, he's a UFA in 2026 or becomes a free agent that summer. Of a 4-year, $34.8 million deal he signed with the Blue Jackets just 2 years ago, and he has an $8.7 million cap hit. So again, like I said, that first round pick in the first trade scenario could, you know, that might make sense to get them to retain salary, but I wonder, you know, Columbus is in the middle of a rebuild. They've had a lot of turnover. I wonder if they even want to retain salary. They can certainly do it because they're not going to be great, but I think it's something to, you know, keep an eye on. It's pretty interesting. While his cap hit is huge, his contract also represents a short-term commitment. That's right. It's only 2 years long, so that could be interesting for, you know, it's very interesting for the Rangers, right? It's kind of low risk, especially if they retain salary. Yes, you'd have to give up a high draft pick probably in doing that, but it is pretty interesting. Like, you get that scoring at will, I feel like Patrik Laine can do with very good players that the Rangers have. So it's going to be interesting to watch, right? So we'll see. Patrik Laine, again, didn't have a great season last year. We'll get into his stats here shortly. I mean, or quickly, I should say. 9 points last year in 18 games, so about half a point a game player. Didn't play much last year. Didn't have too much usage. Again, it was injured most of the year. Went to the player assistance program. Just got out of that, which is great. Congratulations to him. He's back. He wants to play. Again, he's still relatively young. Like, he's not even 27 yet. This is still a very useful player in the NHL. So, going to be interesting to watch in terms of, do the Rangers go out and get this player? I think he would be a great fit on paper, but the only thing, again, holding them back, it seems like, is the contract, which you can see here expires in 2 years' time, $8.7 million. They just can't take on that cap hit. They can't. It's impossible in that way. You would have to retain salary. So what does that trade look like? You're probably, I wouldn't say losing, but you're going to lose a valuable, very valuable asset in that, probably a first-round pick, and maybe Capo Caco too. But, you know, if you have to trade and move off of Capo Caco for a player like Patrik Laine, I wonder if you look at doing that, right? I wonder if that could be a good thing for the Rangers, because Capo Caco hasn't really performed to what everyone thought he was going to at this point in his career. And Patrik Laine is still relatively young as well, and we know he can score. And with all the talent that the Rangers have, probably can score at will. So it's going to be very interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.